Good morning, YouTube. This is 2Yang. It is so good to be back. A lot of things have been happening over the summer, whether it's music related or school related, and I owe you guys lesson 4. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right back into this. I'll do another session talking about my experiences over the summer and things that I've been doing differently, and also some upgrades that are going to be happening with my website and my YouTube channel. So, stay tuned for that. I may even do a live session on that, so we'll see. Anyways, here is lesson 4, singing mechanics, or understanding the relationship of sound. And so a couple of things that I'd like to get us used to is understanding that singing is a mechanic. It is a basic mechanic that most of us can coordinate. And when I say most of us, I really mean if you can produce a vocal sound consistently, whether through speech or even singing, it's possible to build that coordination, right? And that's why I feel that it's very important for us to just learn the the ones and zeros of sound, right? What needs to go on, what needs to go off, what has to happen, what doesn't need to happen. And so this is a very basic approach, and hopefully, with some part of this basic approach, it opens up to some more advanced concepts that some of you can absorb. And if not, immediately, if you can't understand it immediately, that's not a problem. It just takes time to really get into this, but hopefully I'll be able to bridge that gap for you. So ADSR, we're going to learn a little bit more about that, right? Later on in some of the slides, and I'll talk to you about what ADSR is and how it can help our approach in singing. And of course, some application and practices for you. So, what is singing? For me, I feel that speech and singing is actually very closely related, meaning that how we speak can also translate into how we sing. And at the same time, how we speak is just a part of our singing process, meaning that our primary languages and secondary, and those of you that know more languages than one, whether you've studied them or you've learned them on your own, all of that builds into our basic mechanic, right? We use our voices daily when possible. And all of those sounds that we make, those combinations of sounds, that builds into our basic mechanic. At the same time, the music that we listen to also influences our singing, right? If you, let's say, for example, if you're singing along the radio with somebody, or you hear someone's voice and their voice starts to resonate with you, you can kind of feel their voice within your own voice. That can also build a mechanic, whether it's mental or a physical mechanic for us as well. Now, prior knowledge is very important, right? So we just talked about our primary or secondary language, what you know before you start. And that's very important because anything that you do to your voice will build some sort of foundation, right? So if you always speak a certain way, if you speak with high dynamics, if you high or extreme dynamics, and you're very, very, you have a powerful voice, then you can command that in your singing. Or if you have a very, reserved voice, very smooth voice that's connected and soft spoken, you can also command that within your singing. Because it's just a coordination, right? It's understanding that speech and singing can be bridged together. Now, you've heard the phrase music is a language, and I'd like to add a little bit more to that, in that languages can be musical. We can take the Asian languages, for example. So I speak Hmong, and in Hmong, we have certain pitches, and those pitches are pretty much absolute. If you don't get the right pitches, then it changes the word, it changes the meaning. Even within context, it may be the wrong word. You may say something that you didn't want to say simply because of pitch. And so there are certain languages that have rhythmic musicality, that have pitch musicality, and even dynamics, right? The rise and fall of the phrase in the English language, how we end our phrases determines whether or not it is a question or a reply, a statement. And it can be very powerful in what we do. So that is already built into you. I don't want you to feel like singing is so far out that you can't reach it, but really just understand that if you are speaking a language or if you're able to make certain sounds, you have the ability to make beautiful sounds, to make powerful sounds and meaningful sounds. So coordination, I firmly believe that the not being able to sing is simply a lack of coordination. And that's where we have to start building these mechanics, right? So these basic mechanics of pitch, rhythm, dynamics, phrases, understanding where the music is going, the text itself, as well as the context of the text. And through that, we can really pull through some powerful build a foundation for us that can help support the things that we do, whether it's speaking or music. And regardless of the genre, the singing mechanics remain the same, right? Our voices are we're all pretty similar, right? We all have vocal folds, we have a voice, we have a larynx, pharynx, we have a mouth, tongue, teeth. These resonating these spaces that we have that allows us to make these sounds. So they are similar in terms of the actual items, if you want to call it that, the things that we have. But in terms of the shape and the size and the different uh, physical aspects of it, that's slightly different. But even with all that, we can still come back to the basic mechanics that can help us. So the ones and zeros of singing, right? What is needed? Some basic mechanics, right? To me, I like to think of it kind of like a computer in a sense. What needs to be on and what needs to be off. For example, your alignment, okay? What needs to be on? So if your alignment is off, you'll just kind of sit back and you're right. Posture is out of place, pretty in a pretty relaxed mode, but I'm not in an efficient mode for singing. So I need to check my alignment, and there's plenty of resources for you out there that talks about alignment. For me, I like using the term confidence, and that kind of helps invigorate my alignment in a sense. So for me, the alignment is on. My shoulders are relaxed, back, right. My spine is slightly lengthened, not so much, not stretched out, but slightly so, so that I can feel this lower energy around the diaphragm and even below the diaphragm. Right, breath. Are you breathing or are you not? Is the breathing on? Is it off? Right, when you breathe in and breathe out, that's it, right? And the breath can, for me, the breath reinstates the alignment, right? You don't you don't stand up tall and sit in a with a good posture and then all of a sudden breathe in. That collapses that alignment. So the breath reinforces or strengthens the alignment. And then from there, when you make a sound, is it a consonant or is it a vowel? And is there a release at the end? And that's it. So the breath activation, your initial breath should um, sustain and support your alignment and shape. There's nothing cut off there, so let me see if it's okay. Good, it's not going to cut that off. It should prepare the shape of the sound or phrase. It needs to sustain the context of what you're singing, resolve the context of what you're singing, and then from there you repeat the process. So let's take a look at ADSR, which stands for attack, decay, sustain, and release. Now, if you work in with DAWs or if you work with electronic music, MIDI, and whatnot, you deal with this quite a bit. Whether it's a compressor, whether it's on an actual MIDI input of some sort, you deal with attacks, decays, sustain, and release. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Now, if you notice at the very beginning here, at you have your attack, your decay, and then your sustain and release. For me, I like to bridge that with my voice, right? Connect that with my voice. Right before your attack, there has to be a breath or a sound preparation, right? There has to be your breath that prepares. So this is even before the attack begins. Now, the attack can be a glottal or a consonant, right? So, or ah, ah, o, e, right? So there's a glottal, and that's the actual attack. And from there always follows some sort of decay or increase. It's really a decay, but that decay becomes the initial part of our vowel in which the vowel is sustained. So if I'm doing da, 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 you can hear the initial attack and then it immediately decays into the vowel. And then if I say da, so the at the very end is a vowel release. Or if I want to say, let's say for example, attack. Attack is a release. And sometimes in choir, we like to do a shadow vowel, right? And that shadow vowel gives us that final release sound. So like, Amen, Amen, the n at the very end. I think I'm a little off pitch right now with these headphones. So I should probably use the open headphones instead of these closed ones. Anyways, so the attack is the time taken for the initial run-up of level from nil to peak, beginning when the voice starts. The peak is typically a consonant or a glottal. And the decay is the time taken for the subsequent rundown from the attack level to the designated sustain level. In some cases, if there is no decay, the sustain may be equal to the peak attack level, or it may not be. The sustain is the level during the main sequence of the sound's duration, usually the vowel or shape of sound until the release. The release can end with a vowel, shadow vowel, glottal, or consonant. Usually the ending vowel or consonant shapes the perception of the release. And then, of course, the release is the time taken for the level to decay from the sustain to zero after the key is released or after your voice is released. Let me go ahead and hide my video really quick here so you can take a look for this for yourself. Let me see if I can do this from here. There we go. So that's what that is. And let's go ahead and take a look at the actual an actual word that can help us. So we're going to examine the word friend. Right. So here's our setup again. And notice how starts off at the very beginning. So that's after our breath preparation is the attack of the sound, and the r is our decay, is where the fr is right where the decay starts, right? That's the peak of the attack, and when it decays, the becomes our vowel. Friend. So the ND begins our release after the sound right here. Friend. And this right here, you can say even the N can be part of the sustain, but usually at this point, the sound starts to taper off, the amplitude starts to taper off, and the friend. So you can even add a shadow vowel to that if you wanted to. Friend. And that makes the shadow vowel the final release. So you may get a little peak here in terms of sound to give you that final shadow vowel. So the attack is the F. You charge up with the F and allow the peak to transition into the R. So you don't do right. That's not how we sing in this case. You allow the consonant, the F, to transition into the R sound. Friend. And with most choral music, you want to allow this to be the F and the R to be very energetic, but to allow the vowel to take precedence, right? Because the vowel carries pitch, and the vowel carries tone, the sound, and whatnot. But there are certain compositions that require you to stay in this area, this attack and decay area. Friend. You may have a choir director that wants you to emphasize a word, so it's not always friend, friend, but maybe you want to say, or you want to sing friend. And so that's where the advanced level comes in, right? Is understanding when and how much consonant to apply and how much vowel, the quality of vowel, and then the release. So just going through this, right? The decay uses the R a little bit. For me, if I'm doing subharmonics, really, I don't worry about subharmonics, the actual point of subharmonics, until there is a transition point. So if I'm doing friend, 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 so the r becomes the transition point. If I try to transition on F, there's no interaction, so the subharmonic cannot occur there because it's being created in the mouth. Friend. And then from there are possibilities of breaking up and down the octave that we can deal with that at a different time. So you can use that energy and impact to allow you to carve out the proper harmonics. So the sustained right? The vowel is the source of pitch, clarity, substance, and color of the voice. Be sure that the preparation of your breath already is informed at the very beginning, right? You can't go and then, oh, that's right. I have to have this kind of tone, or I need this kind of energy, because it's too late. Your breath preparation should already include this entire context. All ADSR should be in that already. Of course, right? And then your release, we talked about the N, the ending word here. If you close to the N and release on the D, it should be just fine. And for me, in terms of subharmonics, you want to be careful because that ending consonant has some sort of shadow vowel. So you technically could pop back up the octave if you don't have enough vowel sound there, right? So I'll demonstrate. Friend, friend, friend. See how the friend, 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 friend. So that's where the illusion of proper consistent voice comes in, where you apply enough energy on the release so that you can activate the subharmonic if you are doing that, or other extended techniques. That's a very, very extensive way to approach this, but hopefully you're able to get all that. Right now, I'd like to transition into our application and practice. I'm going to demonstrate for you what the computer does in terms of ADSR, and hopefully it'll come through with Composer Cloud. So the two things I'm using, I'll be using Logic Pro and then the plugin Composer Cloud from East West, and this is a Choral, the Hollywood Choir plugin that we have. So let me go ahead and see if I can do this. Yeah, let's go here. All right. So here you have our setup. You have a soprano A and B. And what I've done is I've separated the words. Now, East West has, I ran into an issue with East West in that I wasn't able to truly do consecutive words together. I had to split them up and give the illusion that there are two instruments that were combined into one, so it sounds like a solid line. But let me go ahead and see if I can pull that here for you. Okay, so what am I missing? Yeah, put me back here. There we go. So here we have soprano A and soprano B, and let's go ahead and listen to this. And this is the Ubi Caritas. And you'll notice, so this is a computer, this is a MIDI program, and then Composer Cloud East West has a patch of a choir singing consonants and vowels, and we're putting these consonants and vowels together. I'll do another video regarding East West, so I'm not going to do it in here because it takes a lot of time. But let's take a look at the parameters. So we have an attack, decay, sustain, and release. And there's also a hold parameter here. So the attack, if you want to hold that attack as well. What I'm going to do is for both soprano A and soprano B, so let's set them side by side here. So I'm going to change the attack to match both of them. So let's make the attack pretty long, and let's see how this changes our concept of sound, right? So you should hear less consonants, less initial sound before the actual vowel comes in. So let's see what happens. And it's unfortunate because I believe Hollywood choirs, even though the parameters are really, really great, it doesn't quite give you that impression of a true sweep through that. And so if we lowered it to 0.5 milliseconds, let's see what difference that makes. And so it's very slight, but it's almost negligible in a sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a new software instrument. And this is, I feel like it's a patch problem usually. And I've run into this earlier. Earlier it worked fine, and sometimes the patch doesn't work. There's like you have to work with the breath control and the modulation. I don't want to get into that right now. So let's take a look at a classic. Let's just go ahead and create a MIDI region here. Solo this. And let's go ahead and just do a couple of chords. Let's do just a couple of notes. So I'll just randomly put them in here. Let's see what it sounds like. Ah, yes. Okay. So we have that. Great. So here's our ADSR. Let's go with a nice Steinway piano. See what this sounds like. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the attack, and I want you to hear the difference when that attack is slightly delayed. So you'll notice how all of a sudden the initial attack is smoothed out, and it's almost non-existent. You can't hear the attack of the piano. And you, in terms of voice, if you're singing, especially in choir, if you're singing without enough consonant energy, your consonants usually get lost in the beginning, especially in a room. And so you want to be aware of how much attack you have. So what if we lowered the attack? Let's do, ADSR. So what if we had a slight delay and then the attack, and then a longer sustain in this case? And then let's lower the sustain. Let's raise it. And see how the release is so abrupt? Like bum, 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 bum. So let's make it feel like it's a little bit more reverberant. Just a little bit more of a release. And so you get to control your sound by simply shaping this idea of attack, decay, sustain, and release. So there's our decay, sustain, release. So let's lower all this and see what happens. And let's change the attack. All of a sudden, we have almost a different instrument, even though it's using the Steinway piano patch. It feels like a different instrument in this case. And so all of this is just to kind of show you what it really does. It's unfortunate because the sound patch is not doing what I need for it to do. So once again, just to kind of sum up everything for you, our singing mechanic, right? What is singing? Speech and singing is important, and it coexists. How you speak and how you sing is related, and at the same time, it can be heightened or lessened based on what you need and the context that you are in. Your prior knowledge, what you've learned before, it's very important and can be very helpful in assisting you in developing that coordination. The ones and zeros of singing, right? What is needed? What are the basic mechanics? Breath activation, right? Attack, decay, sustain, release. How are you breathing? What are your consonants? What are your vowels like? Are your vowels all over the place? Are they controlled? Are they a mix of both? And then the application and practice, right? In this case, we use Logic Pro, some MIDI instrument, and the East West Choir plugin. I'm hoping I can demonstrate that for you better next time, and we'll see if they can make a better update in terms of the attack release there. And really, it's just practice, right? You need to practice using words and consonants. We're down to just like a minute left or so left here. So when you practice, work on those consonants, right? Reflect on what those consonants feel like, how they relate in a word, and then revise. How much energy do you need to deliver that consonant? Right? Record yourself in a room and see what it feels like. Be up close to the mic or be very far away from the mic and see what the room sounds like. Sometimes we get really caught up in trying to get the best sound as close as possible to increase the signal to noise ratio and to really have the listener feel our voice, or to be able to hear our voice very loudly. In this case, I'm doing this because of signal to noise. But if I were to practice, I would just leave my phone or whatever recording device somewhere and just sing and see how consonants, see how much energy I have in my consonants, how much energy I have in my voice. Revise and then repeat. If you have any comments or questions, just post them down below. I'd be happy to reply to them and to do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. With all of that said, I want to thank you all, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks.